The trade market was noisy and full of strange sounds. Merchants shouted, trying to sell everything from rusted machines to glowing fruits. In the center of the market stood a small stage. A group of buyers gathered around, their eyes filled with greed. On that stage stood a young alien girl. Her pale skin was covered in dirt, her clothes torn and too large. She didn't look at anyone. Her head stayed down, arms wrapped tightly around her body. Her soft purple-blue skin shimmered faintly under the light, but she looked weak, like someone who had not eaten properly in weeks. "She's broken," one trader laughed. "Not even worth feeding." 10 credits, shouted the auctioneer. 10 credits for this last item. She was once trained, so they say, but now she's just trash. The crowd laughed. No one raised a hand. A few threw fruit peels at the stage. At the edge of the market, a human man stood watching. He looked different, his clothes dusty but his eyes sharp. His name was Cal. He was a scavenger, someone who searched old ships and ruins for parts to sell. He looked at the girl, not with pity but curiosity. 10 credits? Cal asked, stepping forward. The auctioneer blinked. Yes, final price, no guarantees, no returns. Without another word, Cal dropped a small chip into the trader's hand. The auctioneer laughed. "You just bought yourself a broken toy, human." The girl didn't move. She expected pain or chains, but Cal didn't hit her. He didn't yell. He simply stepped closer and said, "Come with me." She looked up for the first time. Her eyes were strange, large and silver, but empty, like someone who had seen too much. She followed him, barefoot and silent. As they walked through the crowd, people whispered, "Why would a human waste his money on her? He must be mad, he'll regret it." Cal said nothing. He walked calmly, the girl behind him like a shadow. Outside the market, across the junk field, stood Cal's small home. It was built from old ship metal and parts. Simple, but strong. He opened the door. "You can rest here," he said. She stood at the door, unsure. "You're not chained," he told her. "You're free to leave, or stay. It's up to you." She didn't answer, but slowly she stepped inside. He brought her clean clothes, food, and water. She didn't speak. But she didn't run. As the sun set outside, Cal looked at her and said, "You need a name." She looked up again, surprised. "I'll call you Aya." For a moment, something small changed in her face. Not a smile, but something close. The next morning, the small metal home was quiet. Cal was already up, working on an old power unit outside. Sparks flew as he fixed a broken wire. Inside, Aya sat still on the floor, her arms around her knees. She hadn't moved much since last night. She stared at the clothes he had given her. They were simple but clean. She touched them gently, like she was afraid they might disappear. When Cal walked back in, he gave her a small nod. "Good morning," he said. Aya didn't answer. She kept her head low. He didn't push her. Instead, he placed a small bowl of food in front of her. Warm soup. Simple but enough. "I know it's not much," Cal said, "but it's better than what they gave you." She looked at the soup, then at him, and then slowly picked it up. Her hands shook, but she brought the bowl to her lips and took a small sip. Her eyes widened just a little. It was the first warm thing she had tasted in a long time. "You don't have to be scared here," Cal added. "I don't expect anything from you. You're not a servant, not my property." Aya glanced at him, confused. That was not something she had heard before. "I found you in the market," he continued, "but that doesn't mean you belong to me. You can leave if you want, or stay. You choose." She stared at him, trying to understand his words. For years, she'd been given orders, not choices. Cal got up and returned to his tools. Outside, the sun rose higher. The air smelled of oil and dry metal. Birds circled above the junk piles, searching for scraps. Aya slowly stood and walked to the corner where he had placed a soft mat and a blanket. She sat there, watching him work through the small window. By evening, Cal returned and noticed something surprising. His tools had been moved. Not stolen, organized. Some parts had been cleaned. a few even repaired. He stepped inside and found Aya sitting by the corner, quiet as always. "Did you fix these?" he asked. She gave a small nod. Cal smiled a little. "You're good with tech." Aya didn't respond, but something in her posture changed. She sat straighter, like she was no longer just surviving, but noticing the world again. Later that night, as they sat by a small heater, Cal looked over and said, "Thank you, Aya, for helping." Her eyes met his. She still didn't speak, but her face softened. Maybe she still didn't trust him. But she didn't want to leave. Not yet. Over the next few days, Aya started moving more freely around Cal's home. She didn't talk much, but she watched everything closely. Her silver eyes followed every tool, every wire, and every broken machine like she understood them all. One morning, Cal found her in the workshop holding a damaged circuit board. He stepped closer and said gently, "Do you know what that is?" Aya nodded and pointed at the broken line on the board. Then she picked up a small tool and carefully began fixing it. Her hands were slow but sure. Cal stood in silence watching her work. "You were a technician, weren't you?" he asked. She didn't speak, but he saw the answer in her face. Later, Cal brought an old drone that hadn't worked in years. "Think you can bring this back to life?" he asked, smiling. Aya stared at it, then looked back at him. She took the drone in her hands and sat down. Within a few hours, the small machine made a soft whirring sound and floated off the ground. Cal clapped. "That's amazing." Aya looked surprised. No one had ever praised her before. Not like this. Not for her skills. Not with a smile. That night, Cal made them both a simple dinner. He placed a small cup of water in front of her. "I don't know what happened to you," he said softly. "But whatever they did, it didn't take away who you are." Aya stared at her hands. Scars covered her wrists, thin lines that looked too neat, too precise. She remembered metal tables, cold lights, and voices that treated her like she was just a tool. Her breathing got heavy. "Aya?" Cal asked, worried, but she didn't hear him. Her mind had gone back to the place she never wanted to remember, a place of machines and commands, a place where she had been changed, against her will. Suddenly she stood up, backed into the corner, and held her head in her hands. "I'm sorry," Cal said gently. "It's okay. You're safe here." Slowly she sank to the floor, shaking. He didn't touch her. He just sat nearby, giving her space. Later that night, as she slept on her mat, she had a nightmare. She cried out, a word escaping her lips, for the first time since he brought her home. "Experiment." Cal heard it. His heart tightened. Now he understood. Aya hadn't just been a slave. She had been used for something darker, and someone out there might want her back. Not because she was broken, but because of what she knew. The next morning, Cal sat at his workbench staring at the small drone Aya had repaired. It buzzed softly as it hovered in place, steady and balanced. He looked over at Aya, who was quietly sorting through a pile of old wires and parts. He finally asked, "What do you remember, Aya?" She froze. Her hands stopped moving. For a moment it looked like she might not answer. Then, slowly, she lifted her sleeve and showed him a mark on her arm. It was not a wound. It was a number, burned into her skin. "Identification code," Cal said quietly. Aya nodded. He took a breath. "Do you remember where they took you?" Aya looked at him and whispered for the first time, "Facility 9. Underground. Cold. Always cold." Her voice was soft, broken, but real. Cal listened closely, trying to make sense of it. He began searching through his old data chips and trade reports. Finally, he found something. Years ago, there were rumors of a secret lab run by a group of alien scientists. They were experimenting on people, not just their own kind, but others too, especially those with rare minds. People like Aya. That explained her skills. She had not just learned them, she had been forced to learn. And when she became too smart or too aware, they got rid of her like a failed project. Suddenly, a warning beep came from one of Cal's scanners. It picked up movement outside the junk field. A ship, no trade signal, unmarked. Cal looked at Aya. "We have company." She stood up slowly, fear returning to her face. Cal checked his outdoor cams. 2 figures stepped out of the small ship. Both were wearing dark armor. One of them scanned the area while the other held a tablet. "Slavers," Cal said through gritted teeth. Aya's hands began to shake. "They found me." Cal put a hand on her shoulder. "Not for long. I'll handle it." Aya stared at him, confused. "You'll fight." "For me?" He nodded. "I didn't buy you, Aya. I chose you, and I don't let people take what I care about." She felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, not sadness. Something warm. Something she thought she had lost long ago. Hope. Cal quickly started working on an old defense bot. "If they're coming, we'll give them a reason to regret." Aya stepped forward and picked up a tool. "I'll help." Together they began preparing. Far above, the sun burned orange over the metal hills. But in that quiet home, something powerful had awakened. Not a weapon, not a machine, but worth. The sky was dark when Cal and Aya finished setting up the last trap outside the home. Old machines had been turned into defenses, lasers made from scrap, trip alarms from broken droids, and a metal wall built from ship parts. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. Cal wiped sweat from his forehead. "They'll be here soon," he said. Aya stood beside him, holding a power tool. Her eyes were calm, focused. She wasn't the same quiet girl from the market anymore. "I never thought someone would fight for me," she said softly. Cal looked at her. "You're not a thing, Aya. You're someone, and you matter." Her hands tightened on the tool. "Where? I came from. They only saw what I could build, not who I was." "Then they were blind," Cal replied. "Because I see you." For a moment, Aya didn't speak. Then she smiled, just a little. The first real smile since he met her. Suddenly, a light blinked on the scanner. "They're close," Cal said. "Get ready." 2 slaver soldiers appeared from the shadows, moving toward the house with silent steps. They held stun rifles and wore black armor with red marks. "We know you're in there." One of them shouted, "Hand over the girl! She's property of the syndicate." Cal didn't answer. Instead, he pressed a button on his wrist. A hidden turret sprang up from the ground and fired a warning shot, just missing one of them. The soldiers ducked and returned fire, but Cal had already moved. Aya stayed low, activating another defense unit. A metal claw rose from the ground and grabbed one of the soldiers by the leg, throwing him off balance. The other aimed at Aya. Cal jumped in front of her, taking the shot to his shoulder. He fell with a grunt, but managed to fire his own weapon, hitting the attacker's chest plate and knocking him down. Aya rushed to Cal's side. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he said, holding his bleeding shoulder. "We can still win." Aya stood, her hands glowing with sparks from the tool she carried. She ran to the panel by the door and rewired it quickly. A flash of energy burst from the metal wall, creating a shield that pushed both soldiers back. The attackers, now wounded and shocked by the resistance, crawled back to their ship. "You'll regret this," one of them shouted before flying away. Aya dropped the tool and ran back to Cal. She helped him sit against the wall. "You protected me," she said. He smiled, weak but proud. "So did you." For the first time in her life, Aya felt something, deep inside, something strong. She wasn't trash, she wasn't broken, she was worthy. Smoke floated in the air. The ground outside Cal's home was covered in broken metal and pieces of burned armor. The fight was over, for now. Cal sat on the floor with his back against the wall. His shoulder was bleeding, but he smiled weakly. "We did it," he said. Aya knelt beside him, cleaning his wound with a damp cloth. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't stop. You almost died, she whispered. But I didn't, Cal replied. Because you were with me. Aya looked at him. Her eyes were full of emotion, fear, relief, and something more. She had fought back for the first time, not just for herself, but for someone who believed in her. That night, Cal rested while Aya stayed awake repairing the damage to their defenses. She worked quietly but with purpose. Each wire she fixed, each panel she replaced, it all made her feel stronger. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was protecting. By morning, Cal was feeling better. Aya helped him sit up and handed him a small cup of water. You should be resting, he said. Aya shook her head. They'll come back. We need to be ready. Cal nodded. We will be. Together. He watched her walk to the control board and activate the shield again. She had changed. Not just outside, but inside too. She wasn't scared to move or speak now. She had found her voice. Later that day, a message signal appeared on the old comm screen. Aya checked it. A coded alert. Slavers had sent out a warning. Human protecting stolen asset. High reward offered for return or proof of removal. Cal read the message and sighed. They've put a price on your head. Aya looked at the screen and replied. Then they're scared. Her words surprised him. You're not running? He asked. No, she said. I ran before. I won't run again. Cal smiled. You sound like a fighter now. Aya stepped outside and looked at the open sky. The sun was rising behind the mountains of scrap. Maybe I always was. I just needed someone to remind me. She turned to him. I was sold for 10 credits. They thought I was worthless. Cal stood beside her, still in pain but steady. They were wrong. Aya nodded. Now I believe that too. In the distance, ships passed across the sky, unaware of the small battle that had taken place below. But inside that tiny home made of metal and memory, a fire had started. One that couldn't be bought, broken, or silenced. Aya had found something more powerful than freedom. She had found her worth. Days passed and the junk field slowly returned to quiet. No more soldiers came. No more threats arrived. But Cal and Aya stayed alert, checking the scanners, fixing systems, and preparing for anything. One morning a traveler came by, an old trader who often sold parts in nearby towns. He saw Aya working outside and paused in surprise. Is that the girl from the auction? He asked. Cal stepped forward. Yes. The trader scratched his head. She was sold for 10 credits. Everyone thought she wouldn't last a day. She's still here, Cal replied. And stronger than most people I've met. Aya looked at the trader without fear. In her hand was a tool she had just used to repair a communication panel. The trader looked impressed. People are talking, you know. Words spreading fast. A broken slave girl helped stop a slaver attack. Some are calling her a hero. Aya didn't react, not with pride and not with fear. She simply said, I'm not a hero, I'm just free. The trader nodded. That's rare enough these days. After he left, Cal sat with Aya under the metal shade outside the house. The air was warm and the wind carried the smell of dust and fuel. You've come a long way, Cal said. Aya looked at her hands. I used to believe I was just a tool. Built to fix machines, nothing more. Cal smiled. And now? I still fix machines, she said with a small laugh. But now I know I'm more than that. Because of you. Cal shook his head. You were always more. I just gave you space to see it. Aya leaned back and looked at the sky. The clouds were thin and the sun was bright. Do you ever wonder why you stopped at that auction? He nodded. I do. I think something in your eyes called to me. You weren't broken, just waiting to be seen. Aya looked at him, her voice soft. Thank you for seeing me. They sat in silence, letting the wind speak for them. In the world beyond, wars still happened, markets still traded, and people still judged others by what they could sell or buy. But here, in a quiet home built from scraps, one man had given value to someone others threw away. Not with money, with respect, with kindness, with belief. Aya stood and walked toward the workshop. She glanced back. I'm going to build something new, she said. Something better than what I was forced to build before. Cal raised an eyebrow. What is it? A message, she said with a small smile. To anyone who feels lost. He nodded. They'll listen. Because now Aya wasn't just a girl sold for 10 credits. She was someone the stars would remember.